afternoon, everyone. Welcome. So exciting. I love packed rooms. Call this study session to order, and we're going to start with something from the Facilities Committee. There's one specific issue that Facilities Committee is looking for direction from the board on, so they're going to introduce that issue, ask our opinion, and then move on. If you guys feel the need to have other things discussed in facilities, we can set up a separate study session. But just for the sake of time with our tech and ed services, I just want to keep it to the one issue this afternoon. Okay, go ahead.
I want to introduce Tim Chen from DLR Architects. Tim is our lead architect on the B1, B2 project, and he has a short presentation regarding the exterior of B3 and B4 and some options we're considering after we've completed the exterior paint lead abatement. Tim?
Okay, Tim, wait one second. Before we start, I did want to tell my colleagues, if you did not hear otherwise, that DSA has approved the plans for B3.
B4.
That's still in the works.
Approved the plan.
That's
For
great.
B3.
B3.
B3 is approved now. So that's a big good news that we got this week. So that's another, keep it moving forward. Go ahead, Tim.
Okay, I'd like to also introduce Al, our counterpart.
Hi. Hi.
Al, do you want to do the talking?
No, go ahead.
Okay. Well, I'll use the mouse since I've got the mouse here.
Can you turn that slightly?
Sure.
Thank you.
Just enough so Mark can't see what we're doing with school.
Okay, so we're in the district office. This is the campus. As you guys have seen during the demolition and the abatement of the paint on the exterior, we've uncovered some red brick, particularly around the band room and around the Salted Theater. Those are buildings that were added in 1967. The existing buildings, B1, B2, B3, those were all original 1926. And there was a portion of B4 that was 1929. All those buildings are concrete brick. They're naturally made of cement, so they're lighter, gray, white. And the 67 buildings, the add-ons, they're red brick. So,
And if I could just throw a credit, it's the choir room, not the Salted Theater.
a little bit, it's both, yes. Yeah. So, this is what it looks like from Moreno as of right now. So this is the back of Salter, and then the choir room's over on this corner at the north end. So that's the red brick, and then you have some classroom space. That's the original 1926 building. And then down here on the south end, you have the band room, which is again the 67 brick. So we're looking at. I'll fly through a couple of the existing photos as they are. This is kind of pointing out the transition from the add-on of the 67 to the existing. So it's some harsh transitions, but there. For the little eyebrows, please ignore those. We'll be replacing those. We uncovered those during demolition. We'll be matching those with the concrete brick. Again, some transitions. And then this photo is showing the existing condition of the brick. What we found with the 1926 building when we did the sandblasting, it really took out a lot of the existing brick and damaged it a lot. We were kind of concerned that the same was going to happen with the clay brick, just because it's a little bit softer. But after doing the sandblasting, it actually turned out to be in pretty good shape. Band room. This is a panoramic picture. It's a little bit altered, but this is the back of the Salted Theater. And here's the choir room. And again, a close-up of the brick. And this is kind of the main corner of your main entry north campus. Again, red brick. This is a plan showing the extent of the red brick, choir room, Salted Theater. And then this is some classroom space, and again, the band room. The two options that we wanted to look at is leaving the red brick exposed, as it currently is. It hasn't been damaged too much with the shot sandblasting, or painting to match so that it matches the existing brick, which is kind of what the campus had prior when everything was just painted white. Here's some aerial views. These are very crude but basic renderings to massing options to understand the scope of the extent of the brick. And this is the current state of it. Red brick, concrete brick. And this is what it was before paint to match. And this is a photo that's been altered to make it look like the brick has been painted to match the concrete. Lastly, they don't necessarily need to both be painted or both be left exposed. They can be independent of each other.
Can you quickly tell me, what is that smaller building, like it looks like one level right there?
That's
Yeah,
the band room.
That's the band
They
room.
painted it white.
So,
So if I could add, when we began the shot blasting, or just prior to, we discovered the clay brick. We immediately went into options to how we're going to address the clay brick. It was assumed that everything was the concrete block that you see on all the remainder of the structures. But after we did a couple of samples sandblasting to do as least of intrusive sandblasting process as possible to not damage the underlying brick, and we exposed the full length of the walls, the problem that we ran into opened up an opportunity. And that opportunity is to leave that natural color of that 1960s additions, and in some views, in some standpoint, it actually complements the kind of historic look of the building. So what today we wanted to present to you a painted option and an exposed option. Now, we had a little bit similar discussion at the very beginning of the B1, B2 project when we had some consultants come out and do treatment, some samples of treatment to that exposed gray concrete brick or concrete block on the B1, B2 structure, and we ran with that. And that's our current scheme throughout the B1, B2 is to take that historic look, that natural brick, and renovate the mortar and leave that and seal that building in its original state. So one idea is to go ahead and use the same methodology on the clay, even though it's a red adjacent to the gray, or paint to match and kind of hide it or blend it in. So we wanted to bring that to the attention of the board. It's been discussed in facilities committee, and it's kind of it's the front entry of the school, so it's a large impact visually to the campus. And this is a good depiction of the kind of the side-by-side of what would be the finished product of the two options. So any questions at all? We have two members from the design team here. Jeff Rising from Pro West Construction, as well as myself from the facilities department.
Okay, so let's go around.
Well, in these two right here, I understand very well the options where you say leave the red brick or paint over it white. But in these two photos here, they both look about the same to me, except one's a little closer up than the other.
Mouse.
oh, there's red brick on the one on the first.
Do I
on
see
the
the
left.
red brick on one of these?
Red brick
On the
right.
right, on the right.
So behind the trees.
Oh, behind
is
it,
the
and
red
now I
brick.
see it.
Now, the two-story
Now I see it.
portion of the Salter building will always be the gray concrete block. That matches the B1, B2, B3. It's where we got to the choir room addition is when we discovered the red, the change in materials. So on the right would be a finished product of the building after completion of the modernization. with a red brick accent exterior wall. The two-story portion would be gray as you see it now. And on the left is a photo,
Yeah.
altered photo
Yeah.
to represent painting and letting and trying to match as closely as possible the cement brick on the two-story portion.
I think that, personally, I think as long as it can be done, I think the brick is interesting and lends some contrast and so
Character.
forth, but I'm wondering, what's the architect's recommendation? Do you have one?
Hello, everyone. I'm Al. I'm with DLR Group, and thank you for asking that question. Tim, if you could show on one of these slides the overview that shows all of the massing of the building. Thank you. From a design perspective, I have an opinion, but there's only subtle nuances truly between one opinion and the other that I have. So I'll share it, I'll put it out there, and then I'd like to hear a little feedback. For this building, this structure here, it's a distinct and clear form as it exists on the site right now. The brick is in terrific condition. And the way in which the brick abuts the two-story structure with the white concrete brick, it abuts it in a way where it creates inside corners, so the massing is quite nice. It's terminated nicely against this structure. So I quite like the red brick remaining in place for this particular piece of it. It is complementary. It behaves somewhat like a bookend with the remainder of the campus, and it doesn't contrast or conflict with the existing language of the remainder of the building. For this portion here, which is also red brick at this time, I feel a little bit differently about that. Tim, can you show the front elevations again? Well, leave it here for just one more second, sorry. First of all, I do want to mention that the shape, the form of this building, it's irregular in nature. So it's a little bit odd. It's not as a nice clean mass as this building is. And for the front of the building, the way in which the red brick terminates against our two-story concrete brick, there's very little distinction. They occur in the same plane. There's only a slight expansion joint between the two. So there's less distinction, less contrast happening between the two materials. So I feel a little bit different about this building. I could go either way. I don't mind necessarily the painted approach. I don't mind necessarily leaving it in the raw red brick because it is interesting and it is in good condition and I like the feel of it to a certain degree. So that's my opinion, essentially as a designer, my particular preferences.
Thank you.
It's tough because I'm used to seeing it with the white paint and so that to me feels like what it's supposed to be, but at the same time I like the character of the red brick. I think for me really beyond just visually is what it comes down to is maintenance wise, what is easier for us to paint or to seal it with a clear sealant? How frequently does it have to be reapplied? So, I mean, for me, it's a financial decision pretty much more than anything else. The only other question that I have is, we're looking at it without the tile on that roof, correct? Is that, it's been taken off already, the brick? Or do you have the tiles on there? So can we go back and
Hasn't
take a
been
look?
replaced yet.
Not on that one, but on the front one.
This lower one here?
No, the band room.
Sorry.
Right.
Yeah.
So I think if you go to,
Maybe one of the photographs.
yeah, that's a shot.
First one.
My concern
If
is
you go to the
I
second slide.
don't want the roof tile and the red brick to clash. So what we're looking at is really weathered, and that's gonna be taken off and replaced, right?
Right.
So it's gonna be more vibrant.
Gotcha.
Correct.
So I feel like that computer rendering makes it all kind of blend together, so it's this super reddish
Right.
orange,
Yeah, I know.
thing, and
Texture
so
between the two.
as much as I like the brick and I wanna go with, what's gonna be most cost effective to maintain. My concern is that it actually kind of would stick out with the red clay tile on the roof and the brick kind of all together. But I don't know.
That's the way it was originally.
No, it was painted white. That was all painted white. So it didn't.
Yeah, I don't know when they painted it. I mean, they built it this way in '67. I don't know if they painted it directly right after.
It was painted up till now, though, wasn't it?
Yeah. So
I think it was painted right off the bat because one of you had mentioned that it was built this way to paint.
Yeah.
They didn't intend to expose it.
It seems that way to me,
Yeah.
it does.
Yeah.
And there's been some discussion internally that possibly they used the red clay brick from a cost-saving standpoint during the 60s as opposed to the cement brick, knowing they were just going to paint it anyway. But again, we've exposed something and we thought we would share it with everyone.
So that would be my only concern, really, is that it's a little overwhelming with the clay tiles and then the red brick.
There's no contrast between the two. It's
Yes.
like just,
Yes.
But there is that border, correct?
yeah, it's going to be the same.
And then it matches the other brick on the other,
Yeah.
the arches.
Yes, it translates.
Oh. Well, my question is, how soon do we have to make a decision on this, being just handed this today without discussing it, that you would need to know, or that we would make a decision or give some instruction as to what to do? That would be, is this where, are we at that point now where,
I think we have about a 30-day window.
okay, okay, I just was curious, like, do we have to give you direction today and?
No, I think within 30, if we had direction in 30 days, that would suffice. We're trying to get this out in front early.
So you're talking about painting big bricks that exist, that are fairly good condition, or leaving them as bricks the way they are,
Correct.
as I understand it?
Correct. And
Or a
seal-
hybrid of,
sealed.
or a hybrid of the
Or a
two.
hybrid of the two, paint one, leave the other.
When you say a hybrid, are you talking about another color, or are you talking?
No, no. So the options are this, you would paint all the red brick, or you would paint just the main entrance and leave the band room area red, or the opposite. So I think Al's point was, in terms from a design standpoint, the preference would be, if you're gonna paint anything, the design as it stands right now, because of the shape of that building and its congruency to the existing building down Heath Road primarily, it makes more sense to paint the north end of the building white to match the brick, and maybe leave the band room section in the authentic red clay brick. Kind of makes a statement, kind of sets itself off.
Except for what Tristan said about the roof, because that section doesn't have the roof.
It doesn't have a roof, I was just
So
gonna mention
you're
that.
not gonna have to fight that contrast. So if you switch it, Tim, to the other one?
So you're not talking about a great deal of money difference either way, because it's already, you either paint, leave the bricks, right?
The block fill, prep, and sealer, just for discussion purposes, let's say about $35,000 for the painting option.
The painting
The
option.
whole thing. That's your cost delta. So it'd be a $35,000 savings to not paint.
And then maintenance going forward.
Well, you have to maintain the paint, where the bricks will
The
stay the same.
paint you would look at repainting after
Yeah, but
X
in the
number of
bricks, you don't
years.
have to repaint.
No, each option would receive and a graffiti coating as well.
Well, to me, more color you could bring in, I like. I think it makes it a little more interesting. And so that would be my only thing about it, since everything else is being equal. I like contrast, but not a lot of contrast. And this is the only place where we can sort of say, well, this is the entertainment center of this school.
Right. And it's original
Yeah,
original
so
material.
that would be my only thing. Okay, I'm finished.
Yeah, I kind of like that, and I also like the architect's, recommendation. I think it's fine. Your preference is to paint that, I don't know what to call it, that building white. I kind of like the red more, to be honest with you. I also remember, and maybe I'm incorrect, the pavers, aren't we going to have pavers original, like when this is all done and set? Aren't we supposed to have some pavers in that, along that area where students are going to be walking on Heath? And I think that will bring some color as well. I mean, because right now we're seeing a gray floor. But I remember from the from the original drawings and stuff that we received, I remember pavers being very, very
There's some patterning that's happening.
attractive to that area, and so that's gonna give it some color. So if you leave it with brick and then you pick up the pavers, maybe that's too much color, I don't know. Maybe that's why you're asking for the white. I can see why the white would make more sense in that regard, because you're gonna pick up a lot of color. I just want it to look the most attractive. Whatever looks the most attractive, I think is what we want, so.
And then there's the historic element too. It kind of gives it a little more historic character to leave the raw. So it's a great topic to discuss, and that's why we brought it forward.
Thank you.
I appreciate that.
Thank you. So I'll say this, hopefully. One, you can leave everything brick towards the end, and then decide to paint. You can't unpaint. So as much as 30 days to make a decision, I think the board is leaning towards leaving it. You're all laughing because you know I'm right. But I am inclined, and because of what you said, and I hadn't looked at it, Tristan, is the roof, that issue with the roof on the band room. The roof actually ties that section together very nicely with the rest of the school, and if you did wind up painting that part to match the building, you would keep the congruency, and nobody would be worse for the wiser. And by leaving the other part brick, you can maintain the historic element of it. And like I said, this is a decision I would prefer to make once the new windows are in, once some of the once you can see what the finished product is. Because it's way too hard to see through this completely. It's going to be completely changed as far as the arches, the metal there, the landscaping. It's all going to be different. So it's hard to get a feel for what that paint or no paint would look like. I prefer to leave everything right now and go back and revisit painting the band room later on. That's my thought.
So, and you are correct. The 30-day time frame was bid scoping and bid development for the final bidding process on the B3, B4. But even if we just wrote an additive alternate for paint of these two areas, whether we accept that or not, that buys us the time. Plus, we have a locked-in price and don't have to pay change order costs, later on in the job.
And I'm hearing that the consensus seems to be toward leaving the natural brick.
And I will tell you, when you add pavers, it does change the character of the scheme of colors, and it will bring out, like the white that you see there won't be an issue, and it actually will blend in if you leave it with red, I think, from my experience, when pavers really do complement.
But that's
Yeah.
only really up Heath Avenue, that doesn't
No, but that
impact the
white,
front band.
you'll see it though.
It'll
when you're driving.
affect the
The white.
B4 side of it on that
Yeah.
Heath side.
But not the
Yeah.
band.
So I think if colleagues are okay with, we'll leave it natural brick for now. They'll build in both options in the price, and we'll revisit it toward the end when we really have to make that decision.
Perfect.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you for bringing this. Okay. Now for the not Dustin presentation.
Exactly. I do want to publicly thank Dustin. He did not have to let us go first. He did because we have so many people involved in this. So, Mr. Seaman, I appreciate it very much.
I like sausage on my pizza, people.
He's holding me to it. Okay, so as many of you know, we presented 2 weeks ago tomorrow. So I don't have a formal presentation. This is more providing the responses to the questions board members sent to us. In addition, Schoology will be joining us to speak to our work with them to alleviate some of the concerns and challenges we've been experiencing with them, with Schoology rather. In addition, Mark Mead and Kim DeCottrell, the administrators from the high school, are here to join us because part of what Mr. President Margot sent to us has specifically to do with the high school and the challenges there. The challenges at the high school have been more pervasive than the other sites. And then, of course, the coaches, Karthik and Gray, are here to speak to some of the questions we had about equipment, inventory, how we service devices, repairs, that type of thing. So because the Schoology team is on the East Coast, I thought that we start with them. It's like 7:30 their time. So it looks like we're ramping up. Thanks, Gray.
Can we turn the screen again a little bit?
Thank you. I had asked how many teachers have been trained, and I don't see that question here.
It's there, it's there, Ms. Tech.
Thank you.
May we speak to it a little bit later?
I just don't see it here.
Okay. Because it's basically all all of them. But we'll speak to that in more detail.
Okay.
You're welcome. Oh, I just emailed them. But that's okay.
I thought it was a Zoom.
It is Zoom.
I think,
Oh, thanks for catching that, Christy. The
It's a
Zoom
Zoom.
link is in the invitation, Gray, I'm sorry.
Bernadette, I recently got an email from Cindy Dubin that said that Schoology has fixed that grade book issue. Is that the case, that all the grades are showing up on one page now?
That's a complicated question. Yes and no. The issue's been fixed, but I don't think it's trickled down to the teachers. So can you speak to that too, Mr. Margot?
Yeah, and I'm specifically talking about the parents.
Oh, the parents, it has been fixed, I'm sorry,
It
yes,
has been-
yes.
Okay.
Whether the parents know it or not is the issue.
Well, there's a lot that we don't know.
I have to laugh.
I could fill the empty Peters auditorium and stuff. I don't know.
It is, oh, is it doing that because I'm the host and I need to log in?
Yeah, where is your?
Oh, sure, I'm sorry. Let's see. You know, in the meantime, I don't want everyone just sitting here. Mark and Kim, do you mind speaking about the high school experience? And Mike Fetterman, is Mike Fetterman still in here?
Yep.
I didn't see you when I looked, okay. So Mike Fetterman, well, he'll speak for himself, but I can't express to you how supportive he's been of the high school teachers as they rolled this out. So if the high school team wouldn't mind speaking about your experience. And board members, as you know, they're going to be honest.
So, experience in general. A learning management software. When I first came to the school 13 years ago, I had just finished my master's degree in education technology, and I used Moodle in my classroom, which is an LMS. At the time, I think I was the only one using it, and I remember beginning of every year, for the first 5 weeks, students and parents were very upset. It was very different than what they were used to. By about week 7, 8, or 9, they began to see the value in it, and by the mid of the year, they were very enthusiastic about it, especially students with special needs or EL, because everything was available right there. The thing is, though, it changes how you think about your classroom. And I was actually just talking with a teacher who's kind of dove in, and he's not a tech whiz. If he were here, he'd tell you that. He's spent considerable time on his own, clicking around and trying to become comfortable with the learning management habitat. And the first thing he said to me was, it's changed the way I look at my classroom. But he dove in. Do you want to go to this?
No, Mark, finish your thought, please.
Long story short, there's the training aspect.
Let's take the volume down on the sonics. Thanks, Christy. That is very important. That's
Long story short, there's the training aspect, which there will be some question, has there been enough? And I have some thoughts on that, which I'll save for later. Has there been enough? There's also the glitchiness question, which I think you've heard about, which is a different one. And then there's, of course, the ultimate question of what to do about it, right? But I can tell you I've spent a lot of time looking at grade books, and I think, like, for our first baby step, that has to be solid, right? Is the grade book solid? And I think there is some hope there. I've been looking at the people who have been using Aries and Schoology. If the syncing is working, and Mike will speak to that more than I will, but if the syncing is working, which appears to be, I have been very pleasantly surprised with the Aries gradebook. So when it syncs over to Aries, what that looks like and the tools that are there from an administrative perspective, but also from a teacher's perspective. So I think there's hope on the gradebook. I think the big issue is, are we going to feel good about the glitchiness part? And I think the second thing, which I'm going to let Mike do more speaking to it, is a question that I have. Is it a matter of the amount of time they need for training or the amount of time they need to understand just how different their classroom will be as a result? And I think those are not the same thing. And Mike Fetterman, I think, will speak to it, as I have even with a teacher just the other day. The teacher I just talked to, who's all in and is doing it, is frustrated with the glitches, 100%. But he's also very much eye-open in terms of how this is going to change how he is as an educator. This is not a master's degree ed tech person. This is a person who chose to jump in with 2 feet. But he's also acknowledged that he spent hours at home clicking with it and rethinking. So I don't know for sure, and again, one last time, I'm going to defer to Mike and his expertise as being on the ground floor, how much of this is we need to apply direct instruction and time for people, and how much of it is they are going to have to spend time on their own. And I don't know that we'll be able to structure that. So I think we're making much more progress than it feels. My biggest concern is communication with parents, whether that's emails or the gradebook. Having 3 platforms is not ideal. I can assure you that I've been combing through I've looked at every single teacher on our staff. I've looked at their Jupiter grades, I've looked at their Schoology, and many of them I've looked at their Aries. There is an issue there that I'm hopeful Christy will help me sort out, making that much smoother. Long story short, in Jupiter grades and Schoology, you can look at an entire class roster for a period and see every single teacher's kid and what score they have. I cannot do that with Aries. So in order for me to check if a teacher is turning in grades on Aries, I literally have to go to Schoology or Jupiter grades, find a roster, find a kid, look over and look at that one kid, and then look at another kid. And you can imagine to do that for a whole class would be absurd. So Christy, we're hopeful that that can get fixed, but I understand why people are frustrated. I understand why teachers are frustrated. I do think, though, that Mike Fetterman and the 11 other teachers who have elected to work with Schoology also show that it can be done. And it can be done by tech people and ordinary people. So the question, I think, ultimately is, are we willing to put up or fix the Schoology glitches? The ones that Mike will talk about in a minute. I think we have the people in place to support, whether it's people like Mike, people like Kim, people like Nancy, who have been doing incredible labor to support. We're moving forward. Teachers are getting there. I think there's actually hope. I would love to resolve some of the things that Mike is going to talk about.
Could we switch to the Schoology team, Mike? Is that okay?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. So, Jason, I'm sorry, Joel, can you hear us?
We turned up the TV volume.
Oh,
Yes, I can hear you.
okay, great. So, I'm going to try to catch these are our board members and our superintendent. Just so you can have a visual. That's my background, sorry.
And I'll share that there's something.
I can't hear you.
Oh, can
We're getting feedback from your mic.
Thank you. Okay. Would you speak again, Joel?
I don't know if you can hear me, but I cannot hear anything now.
That's
We're
okay.
going to see anything. We just see some leaves.
Okay. Are you on mute, Greg?
Yeah, Brenda, it's me from this computer, not yours.
Okay,
And mute
okay,
was
no problem.
looping.
Thank you. Okay, is this better, Joel?
The sound is better, yes.
Awesome.
Video, but
Okay.
that's okay.
No, okay, we're gonna keep moving ahead. If you all wouldn't mind introducing yourselves and what your role is, and then speaking to what's been going on.
Sure, I'll start. I had the pleasure of being there about 2 months ago. Remember, I'm Joel Haynes, the Vice President of Product at Schoology, and I'll address some of the recent technical issue that came up, and I know has been problematic. So I'll do that in a moment. First, I'll pass it over to Kelly to introduce herself.
Hi everyone, I'm Kelly Adey. I'm the Senior Director of Instructional Strategy for Schoology, and I've been helping and supporting the client success team as we work with Beverly. And then I'll kick it over to Jason now.
All right. My name is Jason, and I'm part of the client success team here, and I've been the point person here at Schoology, working very closely with Bernadette and her team.
Great. Okay. So I know the one of the primary issues, and I think we can walk through a few other items associated with some of the questions that came up about functionality and training and things like that, and I'll ask Kelly and Jason to help with that. But the first thing I wanted to address out of the gate is to say that I appreciate the opportunity to come here. After I was here 2 months ago, and when I was at the board meeting 2 months ago, I talked a bit about some of the challenges that arise when you integrate two systems together. And they were very direct and thoughtful questions about us, how long we've been doing this work, how long we've been integrating data between systems, and I appreciate the opportunity then to share some of those details. I didn't expect, and none of us wanted any kind of integration issue to pop up to impact students and staff there at Beverly Hills. And so the first thing I'm going to say is I really, and we all are very truly sorry, we apologize for the technical issues that arose. And I want to take just a moment to give a brief summary of what they were and how the confidence we have going forward that those issues won't re-arise. And then I'll stop and take any questions there are about the technical problems, and then we can move on as well to some of the questions that may be out there associated with how the product itself works or how we can support teachers and students going forward. So we had a year, all last year, where we worked closely with parents on the integration. And I know that the Beverly Hills team worked with us on that as well as we worked with other districts to make sure that this was working the way we intended. Again, moving data between two systems can be complex and difficult work, but we take pride in the fact that we work very closely with our student information system partners to get that done correctly. What arose, or what came up here in the last few weeks, was a particular way that Aries handles particular identifiers within their system. And when I say an identifier, think of the way that the computer recognizes a course and a section within that course. And there's nothing right or wrong about it. It's just a way that system handles it that wasn't accounted for properly. And that's something both teams have worked on to make sure that additional items like that don't surprise us. What ended up happening is that identifier was used last year and then used again for courses this year. In doing so, Schoology looked at that identifier and said, okay, this is a course in this year. Because it was conflating the two, it's kind of mixing the 2 years up, we ended up with courses that had content in it from last year. We ended up with some confusion because those courses weren't necessarily related. The system doesn't care if it's a math or a science or a social studies course. It just provided an ID. We took that ID to represent something unique in Schoology. It turns out it wasn't exactly unique. So we worked carefully with Aries to both address the immediate issue, which was to take reports of the courses in which this was being reported and quickly run some fixes. We call them data fixes. It's a way of managing information on the back end of the computer system to get all of those addressed. In addition, the team immediately got to work on accounting for that identification situation so that that would never happen again. There's no situation where we will take an identifier from Aries and see it as a previous year's course. So the idea was to fix the short-term problem to make sure teachers had access to the right course information and the content within those, and that that was resolved for now, and that we could give the district the confidence that won't happen again. We still maintain very close connections with the Aries team. I believe we just provided a short information piece, a little letter written by both companies to help express what this problem was and our commitment to making sure it doesn't happen. And I certainly think I would hope they would come if they were asked, and they'd say that our ability to work quickly and try to get these situations like this resolved is indicative of our support there. So that was the specific issue that I know hit the district here at the beginning of the year and affected a lot of the ability to roll out and feel successful in the courses that were doing it and those that were impacted by this ID issue. So I'm going to take a break there. I don't want to keep going on about that without addressing any questions that might arise. So with respect to that, are there any questions that the board, the superintendent, or the staff there in the meeting have at this time?
Well, I would just ask, how many lingering issues are we dealing with between Schoology and Aries that are still being vetted out.
That's a complex question. Coaches, how would you answer that?
Are you talking to the coaches?
Uh-huh.
Well, there is a link to the document that has some red,
Yeah.
some yellow.
I shared that with you also, board members, to answer Mr. Margot's question. There are some kind of residual issues related to the problem that Joel was talking about, but they are being minimized by the day.
Okay.
So, yes. So
Minimized or eliminated?
eliminated. I mean, the number of problems is being eliminated by the day.
Okay,
Yes.
understood.
And just so you all have a live tracking, that document I talked to you about 2 weeks ago is linked in the document I sent you earlier this afternoon. So you
Okay.
can see exactly what is still plaguing us and what has been resolved.
And are any of those issues, and it's natural to have them when we're integrating and moving on, and as long as there's the hope that they can be solved. There's always going to be problems, it's just whether they can be solved or not. Are those issues preventing anybody from getting fully on board?
Yes. So to President Margot's point, we had more high school teachers, not a ton, but we had more high school teachers who were willing to start with Schoology. And as these problems persisted, teachers started dropping off, and not one of us blames them. Like, I would have too. So I forgot who I emailed, one of the board members, that now we have to work on, or maybe it was a board connection, rebuilding the confidence and trust in our teachers.
Right, so we lost the sale and now we got to get it back.
Yes, and that's much harder to do than when you get them from the
Initially,
get-go.
yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, but we have confidence we can do that, and my confidence comes from the coaches.
Well, when you're looking at a January 2020 deadline, how much confidence do you have to have at that point? Because it's going to be that.
Right.
So I don't know, I think maybe the conversation, I'm hearing one sort of approach to the conversation here today, but I feel like the conversation needs to shift because this is inevitable. So I'm wondering why there's still, it's like, yes, it was difficult, we got it, you're right, we fixed those things, we're moving on, so you ought to get started now because it's going to happen. So I'm not sure why we're like, well, we don't know if we're going to get them on board, and we don't know. Is that Schoology calling now? So I'm wondering when we can kind of say, let go of that tether of well, we're not really sure, and there's still some hesitation.
Yeah.
You know, I give the kids a lot of credit, at least the
Yeah.
ones that I've seen using it and embracing it, because they didn't push back. They were like, kids are often told, students are told, because you change teachers every year, right? So there's always going to be a new way somebody does something.
Mm-hmm.
So they're very used to that, and they're very accepting of it. And this is one case where the faculty needs to treat this as the kids are treating it. And this is something that here, it's happening for all of us together. We need to embrace this together, work through it together. I saw the parent training dates that you have on here, and I appreciate that because that's another element that I had said last time. If you get the parents on board and get the kids active with their parents, there's going to be a greater acceptance of this because they're going to push for this. They're going to want to see when they use the better parts of what Schoology is offering, even right now, right? So the kids that I've seen come home, flip open their laptop, they have all their homework listed there, they click on their links. Mostly everywhere their assignments are done online, turned in online. We're not sitting there printing out a million things at home anymore. Once in a while you have to, that's cool, I like that, but I don't have a color printer, folks, so don't make color a requirement, okay? So I like the direction this is headed, and I think that we continue to encourage and get it ground up from the students that more teachers will be on board because they'll see that the students are invested in it. But you know, that whole fiasco with what I heard about back to school, which I hadn't attended to, but everybody kind of poo-pooing Schoology and all that, it doesn't help at all. It really doesn't help at all, and especially when you know we're sunsetting Jupiter. So why not? Why fight it? I mean, why fight it? And if, by the way, if it wasn't Schoology, it would have been something else because we were voting on an LMS. We voted on this one, so we're either going to make it work, and it's going to work for us well, and if we invest ourselves and our attitude in it, it'll be successful. If we sit there and say, well, this will never work, whatever, of course it's not going to be successful. So I'm looking forward to hearing what some of the teachers here have to say about it, because I think there is a lot of pluses to it, and not that it's without its imperfections, but everything is. So it's just an opportunity for us to shift the focus of the conversation. That was my main.
President Margot, I have goosebumps and butterflies because I was trying to think about how could I say what you just said diplomatically, and now I'm gonna have to figure that out. That's exactly what the conversations have been within our team. We've gotten feedback from teachers. Dr. Brady knows this because I send him texts where he's like, Bernadette, relax. Where our teachers think that the board might decide to stop it or sunset it. And we've had teachers say that, why should I invest in this if it could be stopped at any moment? And I'm just speaking plainly because we're not going to get through this if we don't speak plainly. And we've been getting a lot of feedback about that, which is preventing buy-in and kind of jumping in. That said, we do not in any way minimize the struggles our teachers have had. Like I can't express to you how it's been the focus of my entire team, but I deeply appreciate what you said, and that's how the tech team feels.
I have a question about how it is that what is the plan to make sure that all of the teachers get the support they need to be on board for the sunset in December?
Okay.
Because since everyone's done different PD, some have, some haven't, some have delayed, some have pushed it off, and we know that they're all over the board in terms of skill set and usage. How are we going to make, we worked so hard on creating equity in the district. How are we going to create equity among the teachers in terms of their training, even if it's just at the basic level of being able to input grades, input assignments, communicate. You know, we know the world of what Schoology can do, and it's expansive, but we don't need our teachers to master all of that in order to start using it in January. So on the short list of what they absolutely need to know in order to start using this at the end of the first semester, where are we with that, and how are we going to personalize so that teachers who aren't understanding or aren't feeling like it's super user friendly for them get the type of you know, instruction and counseling, mentoring, whatever that they need in order to become more comfortable with it.
Absolutely. Just out of kind of respect for the Schoology team's time because they're on the East Coast, are there any other board member questions for the Schoology team before we let them go?
So I had a question, a technical question.
I'm going to get right back to your question.
I had been told that Aries loses attendance at the high school. Like there's a malfunction where we sometimes lose the attendance count, and I understand that they've informed you, Mrs. Schaefer, or this is the attendance office, and several parents have said this to me. I've had a few teachers stop me and ask me.
There's a handful of teachers, and it's only happening at the high school.
It's not the teachers. I think it happens. I'm not sure how the attendance is taken. I'm sure it takes. All I was told is that there's a glitch with the system, and we lose that once a week, and then they recapture it somehow. So that was concerning to me. I didn't know that there was a glitch, and so I'm just kind of asking: is that true?
Well,
and the attendance office apparently is very aware of this.
There's a handful of teachers only at the high school that report this. I don't have it anywhere else except for this handful of teachers.
But have you been able to verify that it's happening?
It's hard to tell because whether it's user error or whether there's something wrong with that device or if it loses internet access from where they're at. But it's a very small, it's a handful of teachers, and we haven't been able to isolate.
Have you talked to the attendance office personnel to see if they're picking it up on their end?
I mean, that the teachers are reporting it to them?
No, because doesn't the attendance office capture all this data? Like, doesn't
the teachers input the attendance, the absences?
Right.
And then the attendance office is the one, if a parent calls ahead of time and said, my student's going to be out sick today, they will mark them absent. But if a student doesn't show up at a,
of course,
in that class,
they're notified.
Okay, so just back to Bernadette's, we have people on from back east.
That's not Schoology.
That's not Schoology.
But how is that going to transfer to Schoology if that?
We don't do attendance in Schoology.
So we're not. We're just going to continue on Aries.
Yes, that's our state approved on attendance.
Student information system.
Yeah.
All right. So that has to be explained that we're not going to be picking that up on Schoology at all. We're not.
We've never taken attendance.
It's not part of the LMS.
Not at all.
Yeah.
I think it's really Jupiter.
But it is an important question that I'll put in board connection. we'll get the answer, put it in board connection. This is the first time hearing
Okay,
of
so
it.
questions for these wonderful people back east?
No, I have no questions for the people.
Okay, does anybody else have
I
questions?
do.
Okay.
How confident are you that this is going to all be able to launch in January without, I mean, how confident are you that these issues are going to be resolved so that this program can launch and won't be ongoing growing pains for the teachers?
That's a great question. So I'll answer that in two parts. The first part is I'm very confident, and here's why. I mentioned last time, we have thousands of schools using Schoology for classes every day, and in probably 95 to 99% of them, they're integrated into a student information system. So the fact that this happened is not something that we take lightly. We know how serious it is when we lose the confidence of teachers and the work that we have to do together with Beverly Hills to get that confidence back. But the fact that we know that it works well in so many other places, small districts and large districts alike, gives me a lot of confidence. I'll add to that the collaboration with the Aries team itself, their vice president of product and myself, we've known each other for 25 years, and we have a personal relationship, so we stay in very close touch to support Beverly Hills and other Aries districts. So I'm confident we have those supports in place to give us a good start in 2020. And the other piece to that is, and I'll offer this, you know, there's a set of activities. I think this idea that it launches more generally in January, but that there's an opt-in period here this fall, gives a tremendous opportunity to regain that trust before everyone has to use it. And I would be happy to stay connected with the team, both here at Schoology, Jason and others that are supporting Beverly Hills, as well as Bernadette and the coaches and the team there, and provide additional updates or information as we go through this fall. I really think that by ensuring that the collaboration is in place, that we have quick and meaningful resolution to anything that comes up, and looking at all of the other successful implementations we have, I think we can walk away with confidence. This is going to work well for the teachers and students.
So this is used also in Palo Alto, this program, Schoology, also used in LAUSD. How do you find the integration piece of getting the program launched with BHUSD by comparison to Palo Alto to LA Unified? Because LA Unified obviously is significantly larger. Many more teachers to train and to, you know, develop these expertise and to figure out how to.
Every school doesn't use Schoology. No. Some of
They
them
don't use it
at all.
Okay, but it's also used in Palo Alto. So what, by comparison to launching in those other districts, what has this experience been like? Is it more difficult? Is it about par for the course?
Some teachers refuse to use.
You know, that's a good question. I would say that it's about par for the course from one important perspective or one important detail, and that is that as in each school district all over the country sets up their systems in slightly different ways, their student information systems. So that's how their courses are named, how students are assigned into them. There are 1,000 details that go into them. And so there is some element when you start to bridge that with any system, and this would be with Schoology or any other LMS or any other system where you start exchanging data at the level of detail we are, there's always these little things that pop up. Now, in some cases, they're very minor. They're almost unnoticeable by teachers. They might be something about a piece of detail in the background. In other cases, and I can't speak to Palo Alto specifically, I wasn't with the company when Palo Alto launched 7 or 8 years ago, but I've seen a few other cases where we find that something hasn't translated properly between systems. It's incumbent on us to be responsive, to work very quickly to resolve that, hopefully before anyone notices, but once in a while, and I think there was a perfect storm, the most unfortunate way, where it hit with a particular problem we hadn't seen before for the teachers at Beverly Hills. So I would say that I think that things are otherwise progressing as we hope. Pilot period, getting buy-in from folks, making sure that the integration details are there, that the grades pass back correctly. Like all of those things are what we've seen before.
Any more questions for them? Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Schoology team.
Thank you.
I'll talk to you tomorrow, I'm sure.
Very good. Thank you, everyone. Have a great night.
Sounds fine. Talk soon, Bernadette.
Yes,
Bye-bye.
Tracy, you know that, yeah. So,
So we have a couple of outstanding questions
Yes,
before we go
it's
back to
all
them.
questions.
And then Mr. Smith.
Yeah.
Did you have your question answered, Tristan?
No.
So-
I'm just,
let me-
details.
yeah.
Let me carry it from where you started, because I want to say this to you. I'm hearing all of it. All I know about Schoology is what I've heard in our meetings and what I've heard today. I have not experienced it from the standpoint of a child, a student. I have spoken to no teachers, so I know what I've heard. And as a listener, I'm not a technology expert, anything but. But what I am is a seasoned, educated businessman. And as a businessman, I've had this kind of situation come up to me, I can't tell you how many dozens of times. And there are answers. And Tristan was hitting right on it. And you were asking the questions of a business person. So here's what I would say. First of all, I want to thank you for coming to us in obviously an honest, open way and discussing with us the hitches and the frustrations and the problems and so forth. And I appreciate that very much. It's very important to do. First of all, as far as comparing our results with other districts, which I think is an important thing to do, rather than ask this gentleman, it would be wonderful to ask the people in some of the people in those districts what they experienced as they brought in Schoology. That would be interesting to know. But what's the hub of it is this. You've told us what the objectives are, the good and important objectives, and you've told us in detail what the glitches are and the difficulties and so forth. As a businessman, here's what I would say to you. What I think this board needs at this point is a plan, a proposal, a specific proposal for achieving a resolution of each of the problems. That's what we need. Now, as an and a timeline. Because, as Mr. Mead said, some of the points he raised, the need for staff training.
What'd you say?
And the need for staff training. And he mentioned that it's challenging to a number of the teachers. And he mentioned, I think, that some of the teachers are going to have to put in some extra effort in order to hurdle it. So that's one problem. Communicating with parents, all the things that each of the points you mentioned, and you mentioned. It seems to me that you need to come to us with a plan, mentioning each of the situations that need resolution, and a proposal for how those are going to be resolved, how you're going to do it, and how long it's going to take.
We will do that, Mr. Spitz.
That's what we need, and then I think that we would all be in a position to say, okay, we can move forward on this.
Yes, sir. And may I say, I really also appreciate what you just said. We've also heard from quite a few corners of the district that there's this belief in the field that we've been telling the board that everything's been going well, and all teachers are excited about it, and I think I've done everything but that. So I was I've heard this from several different places, so if it was just one place, I'd be like, okay, but 10, 12, 15 different corners concerns me. So thank you for acknowledging that we've tried to be transparent and honest about this. There's no other way to do this.
Well, I will say this, up till this meeting, I was under the impression that you're moving through it all pretty smoothly. That was the impression that I had gotten.
I'm sorry, I thought.
No, we had, at our last
Now the
meeting.
impression that I had at
At our last
Is
training.
that because of what you've heard, or?
Well, I think maybe because I'm a little more immersed. Well, I'm a parent, but I'm also a little more immersed. I'm at the schools every day. I'm hearing from people that are walking up and talking to me,
Well,
teachers.
Well, that's different, but as a
Right.
board member.
But I'm there every
Can
day
I
for
shine?
dropping off my daughter. I'm there for
But not
hours.
as a
So
board.
people's.
But you know that we,
Okay.
that's
No,
his
anywhere.
point, said it was going well.
No.
We-
No, so I'm not under any delusions, but what I would like to do is confirm two things. Number one, we have a contract with Schoology and we're standing by it. We are rolling this out in January. So in case anybody has any ambiguity about we're walking this back or we're going in a different direction, this is our LMS. We are moving forward with it. That's the first piece. The second piece is that the teachers that have not gotten on board or have not participated or aren't using Schoology, those should be our first priority. Those should be the ones that are the most anxious to reach out to get on board, to develop a relationship with and make them feel comfortable and start work there. And then we need to prioritize it like an arrow. The ones that are most comfortable on it are the ones that are, sadly, or not, for them, probably is a little easier, that are on the bottom. And we need a plan that gets us to finished so that we can properly launch this in January by the end of the semester.
Can I speak to that?
Can I just say
Yes,
it?
yes, it's fine.
Because I've been pretty quiet.
Yes, you
now.
have.
Well, first of all, I know that this has been a problem. I've been hearing it, I mean, from other people here with just the problems that, I see this as a twofold problem. One is the teacher section, and the other is the glitches in it, in far as program itself. We have invested a lot of money in this program, and I'm not about to throw it out the window with the baby and everything else, because it's here to stay. And our learning management system, these kids are gonna go to college, especially from the high school, and they're gonna wind up with this program when they get to college, and they've gotta know it. And so it's gotta start with the teachers, and then it's gonna trickle to the students, and they're gonna learn the system and use it for many, many years to come, should they go to college. So, I know that there are PDs being set up for these teachers constantly, I know that. I think that they're gonna have to get on board, they're professionals, and this is the way it's gonna be, and they need to bite the bullet and get busy and learn the system. Because once Jupiter is gone, what do they got? They have nothing then if they haven't gotten on board with it. So that's my feeling on that one. I mean, I'm a retired teacher, and if I was still not on this board, I would be in the classroom, like still trying to learn the system and trying to figure out how it works and so on. And I think that the teachers can be taught to get with the program at the lowest level, to become comfortable with it, and then to branch out and go further as they explore what the possibilities of the program is. And I think that's where, get them on the bottom level, like you just said, so that they can deal with the program and get with it by January. And then they can say, oh, you know what? This looks good. I think, let me try it. Well, what? And communicating with other teachers will also get them to the same place. So I'm hoping that the professional development, the glitches, that's technology's department. That's your department with Schoology. But the teachers are the most important concern for me right now.
Absolutely.
And I think those professional developments, they have to be required to go to them, and they must go to them to learn the system.
Yes,
Okay,
ma'am.
let's turn it over to the people that are here, because, okay, I just know that it's in here and then they have to leave.
Yeah. Okay, Mr. Fetterman, go ahead.
So I've been sort of biting my tongue back here.
Can you come forward though, please?
Sure.
Because
Yeah,
I need people here.
So I've been using Schoology for a long time, mostly because years ago, Deb Joseph and I, one of my former colleagues, who taught graphic design that I took over, her and I kind of were geeking out over curriculum, and we discovered this, and we thought this is great because it wasn't like speaking as designers, it wasn't a visually enticing thing to look at Jupyter grades. So bottom line is we realized it was a great way to compartmentalize your instruction, add media, add a certain level of dynamism to the classroom, and then also offer a resource for kids that were 504, LI. Anytime you had a kid that was on independent study, floating in and out of independent study back into your classroom and whatever, it was just there for them, and it wasn't kind of dry looking, it was icon based, image oriented. And so, I think like what's happening here is that there's the added issue of the gargantuan level of change that is going on in this, and it feels like we're just being just stuff shoved down our throat left and right. And so with that said, it's kind of expected you're going to have a little bit of pushback because everybody's so tired and just so drained. But the bottom line is that Jupyter is going away. And I mentioned to Nancy, I think a couple weeks ago, that when it comes down to what's supposed to happen, I think Thursday, right, is that let's not talk about showing everybody bells and whistles. Let's divide this up into a couple of different groups of just getting people out of Jupyter, number one, and then another group of people that are specifically already out of Jupyter and put into Schoology in some way, or maybe there's even a third where the people that are in can ask specific questions about stuff they haven't discovered yet. But I got to tell you, like over the weekend, and this is really important because I want to make sure that you guys understand that just because there are people out there that we know always will complain because they complain, that's not the group of people that I encountered over the weekend. There's a private DHA Facebook page, and so my wife told me, hey Mike, you should check this out, and I did. And I was kind of initially sort of defensive because I really like Schoology. I like the idea of being progressive. Philosophically speaking, it's something we have to embrace. You're right. The kids are going to encounter like 5 different LMSs with all the different instructors they have in college, and why not get used to it? So I initially started thinking, guys, I know you're union and you're worried about getting your pay for like this instructional, time and PD, but the deal is that you're going to have to sit down and do it, at the same time. So you're salaried at the same time. So there's a certain level of stuff we've got to do on our own. And so I'm speaking to my colleagues and hoping I'm not making too many enemies in saying that, but the deal is that's true. Like, yeah, okay, so there's a balance. We've got to negotiate with whatever we're allowed to have as far as PD. So that said, the biggest issue is communication. With 3 boys in this district and watching my own students, I think a lot of our communication is going to be a little bit better because the reason why there's trouble specifically with kids being communicated with in classes is that most of the teachers are not quite yet in Schoology, and if the parents haven't also been really aware of that and are not on board, and the phone app for this thing is killer. I love that I can sit anywhere I want and I can do my grading with my phone rather than my laptop. And so if they're on board, if the parents are on board and they're schooled, and the teachers are aware of what their options are in communication, then I believe that communication component that's a little vague and clunky in Aries will sort of go away a little bit. There are certain things that Aries is great for communicating with, like in large batches and big district-wide announcements and things like that. But with this, I think it'll start to go away. Yes, there are some technical issues. I put together this list, and it says, this list represents the bigger idea that too many needs of the teachers and admin are not being met by adopting Schoology. While it does communicate with Aries, the quality of the communication is substandard. That's the way we're feeling. So I think a lot of the kickback actually started probably a year ago when we were invited to be a pilot group of people, and we were invited to Horse Math. And there were issues with parking, not having enough subs, and then the forethought of like, well, Aries is what K5 is using for their standards-based grading, and Schoology doesn't have, at the time they didn't have a standards-based interface or the need for aligning with standards. And so the K5 people were just like, I'm out, like why am I even here, Right. And they're feeling that way now because they're not seeing the dynamic nature of what there could be. Why? Because they haven't been trained, and they're feeling like nobody's really paying attention to they need to be trained. And I can say that because my wife is at one of those K5s. And I've had a little bit of interaction with some of the others. So it really comes down to, we're just feeling like there hasn't really been a formal plan, and that maybe this is going a little too fast, from a lot of them. So I told Nancy, I said, we got to get people out now. They can't wait. They just can't. It's just going to be gone. And so you can't tell them, they can keep using. You can't tell them they can keep using Jupyter. They need to get out before the first quarter's up. It would be nice, what else? There's so much.
That's my question. And I guess it's not a question for you, Mr. Fenner, but I'm glad you raised that issue about the plan. I've been asking how many teachers have been trained. I know that I asked that question in June or July, and I got that. And I'm assuming that number has changed, right? For sure, since June or July, when you last gave us those numbers.
So the numbers have changed in the sense that the high school was the most difficult location to do PD at. So to bottom line answer the question that Ms. Walker-Schumann and Ms. Hacker are asking, all teachers have had access to professional development since last year.
Access, but not been trained.
Yeah. Well, I'm about to, may I go deeper?
Yeah. So
okay.
before you answer it,
Yes.
because this might be part of the question still for me is, so how many teachers, but, what is the plan to, I think Tristan talked about this at the last study session, do we have a list of goals that need to be achieved so that we can kick off in January?
Yeah.
And I think you were going to work on that, right?
No, we've had it since the summer.
Okay.
So
and where are you with that?
Here we are. So if you all turn to page 5 of the document that I gave you, and if anybody in the audience wants to follow along, there are copies in the back. Page 5, toward the bottom, professional development and teacher training. So we break down by site what the training is. So what the overarching thing I want to say is that last year every site had PD in Schoology with the exception of the high school. But it's important to note that it was, and Mr. Mead can speak to this better than I can, it was incredibly challenging to get on the high school PD calendar with WASC. We tried, we had voluntary PD for teachers at the high school, the coaches who were assigned there at the time. We could not get on the PD calendar. The K-8s have had PD, coaches correct me if I'm wrong, since last year. We had introductory PD to the system, and they were required to attend because we had it during mandatory PD, their Wednesday PD. Now what we can't help is if a teacher is absent or leaves the PD early. But every teacher had access. When I say access, we delivered it during mandatory PD, and they had optional PD where they could call a coach to grade level planning meeting, have individual meetings with teachers. That has been available since last year. What the feedback I would receive last year is, Bernadette, why are you doing this so early? We're not starting until next year. So it's like you can't win from losing. And so I think what may have happened is that it didn't seem immediate back then, and people weren't attending to it as closely as they are now because it's happening in 3 months. Now, if you look at these dates, the coaches have had these dates planned out. They worked with their site administrators. Dr. Breggy, along with the cabinet, decided that Schoology and PBIS were it for the year. And we've known that since last spring, and we planned accordingly. The tasks that the teachers have to complete are listed there under essential skill. And I also shared a document with you, it's in your email, that's hyperlinked to our slideshow of what those skills are. So we're very clear about the 10 essential skills that the teachers have to acquire. And these are basic. They have nothing to do with what Mike was talking about in terms of leveraging how robust the system is. So we've had that for quite some time. What I'm noticing is that it didn't hit people until now. Yes, Mr. Spitz?
Well, it seems to me that when you set goals like that, which were set months and months ago.
During the summer, once we knew where the teachers were, Mr. Spitz.
That then it seems to me that you need to have some kind of follow-up as you go along to make sure that it's working for the teachers. If you just set those goals, and those were set a year ago, and leave it go.
I feel like that's exactly what a lot of the kickback is that there's a PD day, and then there hasn't been a lot of sort of checking in, finding out what's going on.
Right.
And so some of the PD days that the K-8s were brought to, well, they were K-8, so you got like half of your staff is like, I'm out because it doesn't make any sense. I'm already using Aries for standards-based grade finalization. I don't have to have the redundancy of Schoology. So their training needs to be identified as completely different. And in terms of the timeline, perhaps it's fine if they sort of, if we wait on the immediacy for the K-5s because they are, we have assessments we've got to get. So that's a big part of this. I have the list. I made a list for each one of you guys. I can pass down like what I basically gave to Nancy and Bernadette if you'd like. And so Nancy and I have sat back there, while the rest of this is going on, and she's sort of saying, no, we can do this, no, we can do this, no, we can do this, no, we can do this. To many of the things. To many of those things, but here's the critical thing, and this is where I think the voice of the teachers really is important. The bottom line is, sure, you might be able to do it, but one, we haven't been trained, and two, just because you can do it doesn't mean that it's easy and it's efficient in time, because that's critical with these people. It's so important. It's my concern too, because I have a workman's comp issue after having to tandem do Jupiter and Schoology, trying to figure out what the heck was going on, and I cannot possibly do that. I really am done, and I can imagine that is just what my colleagues are feeling. Just because we can say we can do it does not mean it's efficient. And there are many on this list. It's been shared with Nancy and Bernadette, and I'm hoping that we go down that bullet point, because these are not just people that are complaining for the sake of complaining. This is legit. So I'm hoping that we'll really go down this. And I'm willing. I'm not a TOSA, but I'm willing to sit and with everybody, and go through this,
I appreciate this very much.
He gave something there. I'll give you copies.
But it seems to me that, for example, to get past this, to respond to these issues, again, you need a plan. There's a lot of teachers. There are a lot of teachers. And obviously, you don't have the staff to put a staff person with each teacher. You have to figure out how you're going to do this thing.
So you have to break it.
It may have to be in groups of 5 or 10 teachers at a time.
And that actually would be much more efficient to do.
Look at the numbers. Yeah, look at the numbers. Look at the numbers. Because that is not, we have not considered that. So we have the full professional development at the staff level, and then
They don't show up, then not all of them show up.
so that's a site administrator issue. So I think it's incredibly important that we differentiate between what my department, what my authority or range of my sphere of influence is, and what we call on the site administrators to help support. And then site administrators have been fabulous through this, but I was a principal. That happens at the site. My team's role is to support throughout the process, and there's accountability that's had at the site. That is not my role. I have to be plain about that. My role is to support and get resources to staff. Site administrators provide feedback and accountability. And that's a very important distinction. So to go back to the size of the groups and all of that. So we have to have staff professional development in order to create equity. Then we've talked to the site administrators about allowing the coaches to attend grade level and department meetings to focus in differentiated support based on the level of the teacher. The coaches have also offered Schoology clinics where teachers are paid to attend so they can come in small groups. In our estimation, we have put out as many different configurations of PD as we possibly can. We cannot make teachers come to Schoology clinics even though they're paid. We only have them during mandatory PD. That is the time we have them. We can't even force ourselves on them during their grade level meetings. That's a contractual issue that we're not allowed to do.
So how would you get around that, Bernadette?
So that's a great question.
If you like.
I do want to talk. It bothers me that everybody's having this view that the teachers are just being difficult and obstreperous and just don't want to do things and everything else. I will tell you, I have not signed up for a Schoology session, even they're offering pay, because I'm not doing anything until November or December. And why I'm not doing anything until November or December, I've tried. I've been to 2 sessions. I did one thing in one 45-minute session and one thing in another 20-minute session. And it was very frustrating. It's not very intuitive. It's not easy to use. I'm not a technophobe. I'm not a Luddite. I'm used to doing this. But I would like to get some things ironed out. And then I want to, when I start doing the November or December, I want to be able to go into it and know that it's not got all these glitches and funky things and everything else. And I know I'm not in the minority, but I want you to understand, we're not just sitting here going, well, we're going to throw a temper tantrum and you have to get rid of Schoology. That's not what we're upset about. We're upset because we're trying to get things done, And it's not efficient, like Mike said. It takes a long time to get things learned. And we're not talking about people who are just trying to be difficult. We're trying to learn just as quickly as everybody else is. I've got kids who are telling me I can't see half my grades because my Gmail doesn't work. I'm sending kids, we're doing all those things. There's a lot been added to our plates.
Yeah.
And we're not just kicking and screaming just to kick and scream.
I want to be clear, we do not feel that way.
Okay,
How
good,
we're
because it's
achieving-
sort of the tenor of it was like, how are you going to make the teachers do this? And it's like, look, we're not trying to be difficult, we're really
That's
not.
not our
I think that's actually,
Okay.
what
That
we're
is
talking
not our
about is
stance.
creating opportunities.
Yes.
so
Which
that
we
teachers who've
appreciate,
not been
yes.
able to take advantage of them so far
Yes.
have the opportunity to do it before the end of the year.
And I just hope that they
Recognizing how
will
much
be,
change there's been.
I just hope they will be ongoing, because you don't know this, but AP decided to have their own grade book that they added. So those of us who are AP teachers, AP now has its own grade book that they want us to use and everything else. And I was just like, I can't do it all.
Wait, this is separate from Schoology?
Yes, it's
Yeah, I didn't
completely
know
separate. AP
Yeah.
Central,
Yeah.
College
Yeah.
Board.
College
College Board
Board, okay.
has done their own new thing, which is brand new to all of us. And so we're all sort of walking around just in shell shock going, just please don't talk to me about it. So I'm hoping that we will keep offering things. I think people will start to take more advantage of them as we get into October and November. Basically, everybody's expressing the same kind of thing, where I'm trying to do this, and every time I do it, I go 2 steps and I hit a wall, and I'm done. I can't go any further. I can't keep doing this to myself over and over and over again. I would like for some of the things to be ironed out so that when we get to the point where we're ready to do that, that it's a more smooth transition for those of us. God love Mike Fetterman and Fine, and for you and the people who are doing it, thank you very much. But the rest of us would kind of like to be a little princessy and get it when it's a little nicer and prettier.
And I think your point is so well taken, and that's precisely why we had the fall semester to transition. Because originally, all teachers were going to go into Schoology August, when you got back from school.
Right, that's what we were
Talking to
originally told.
teachers about it, we didn't think that would work. But I want to say again, there is nobody on my team, and frankly, I've not heard the board members say this either, that think teachers are just like this.
Okay.
There's a small group that we have heard of like that.
Oh, absolutely.
But
We know who they are.
The vast majority of teachers, we do not in any way think that about. We've been trying to offer different configurations of training to meet the needs of different teachers. So I want to publicly say with the camera on us, that is not how we feel.
Well, and that's not how we feel either, so
Yeah.
know that we're not resisting going to trainings and stuff
Thank
just
you.
to be difficult. It's just, like I said, for me personally, and most of the people I talk to, they're like, I want them to get some more of the kinks worked out, and then we'll
That's
be
fair.
more amenable.
Right,
So-
Dr. Lucas, I'm sorry, the issue that they just brought up about the College Board, is that something that you could bring up with Joel and see if that's something we can work on syncing better? Or?
I don't know that it's gonna have anything to do with you guys. I don't think it has anything to do with you at all.
It's just something we gotta do.
It just was one of those moments where we're like, there's a new gradebook program we have to do, really?
So
So,
just to review and kind of wrap this up, we recognize that this already has been a year of huge change for a lot of different reasons, nothing even related to Schoology, and we recognize that. We recognize that the teachers have had a lot to adjust to with incoming students that are unfamiliar, environments that are unfamiliar. We totally understand that. I don't think anyone at this point is saying we want to place blame or accuse people of not having done something right. I think what we need to do is identify where we are and make a plan for how to bridge the gap and get to where we need to be.
Exactly.
And that's not, it's not about attitude. I want to fully recognize, I've heard that there are problems from teachers, from students, from parents, and it's the nature of the beast. And it's what we're going to face no matter what learning system we use. But we need to be solution-oriented
Yes.
right now.
and we are a
recognize-
team.
Yeah, a team. And even the teachers that are frustrated and struggling and don't see the path have to find a way to work together with each other and with the team so that we can solve this.
And they're frustrated and struggling because they care. If they didn't
Totally
care,
agree.
they'd just look at this and go, yeah, who cares?
Totally agree.
But the people who are the most frustrated are the ones who really do care and really do want to have it turn out well, so. Okay, thank you.
Okay, colleagues, anything? Oh, sorry.
Am I done? May I say one thing? Oh, we're gonna make time for you. So I want to say about Mark and Kim, and I said this in the last study session, without them there, now they're here. They have been extraordinary. They've been taking the brunt of this because the high school has had the most challenges. And they weren't even, I mean, this was handed to them like it was handed to the teachers, you know what I'm saying? So I want to publicly acknowledge the struggles that they've been going through too, trying to meet the needs of their staff. They've done, in my estimation, an extraordinary job.
It's more complicated.
Yes, it is. I agree with you, 100%. And they're to be commended for that. Thanks, Mike. Oh, he's not gone.
Thanks, Mike.
Okay. So I turn it over to them for now.
I think, I said this at the PTSA meeting, I think, that I do believe that we're at a tipping point where we understand that it's not going away, and we've done kind of this storming that has to happen before the norming. And now we have this massive opportunity to push things over the edge in a good direction. We do have a plan that is rolling out just now. So we have a curriculum map, basically. Teachers must know XYZ by this date, and then we'll monitor the situation by following up with teachers at that point to see where are you with this, were you able to complete this task, if not, here is some additional support. Just having the conversations creates both a sense of support and accountability, I think, that it's visible, we have a clear plan, we know what the expectations are and when we need to be meeting them. Because we want to make sure everybody is ready come January. So we need to be ready a step at a time, and we need to know who's made the benchmark and who hasn't, and what we're going to do about it now in September and October. We can't wait till November. So we are going to be more explicit about the way we're messaging to the faculty about what the expectations are and when, starting now. We're also employing multiple stakeholders in delivering the message. So we're teaming with the district in public relations with Ms. Starkins. We're partnering with KBEV. We're partnering with the SEC. So the SEC has been trained in a specific task, and we go through it with them until they're able to master it, and they take that back to their departments, and they work with the people in their department and teach them the same task. So I think that we're getting more boots on the ground that way. We're also, trying to make this a learning process for the students, and so we're reaching out to the ASB and the music groups and the media and getting them to work on this as a project and having their teachers lead and develop those projects with them. And actually, that is a pleasant unintended consequence. Asking the students to make this a project of theirs and getting the message out to their peers and doing PSAs about how do I log in, for example, has really gotten their teachers on board as well. So they're getting caught up in the positive energy, and they're seeking out information and being more proactive, and then communicating that to their colleagues as well.
You might be able to use the students to help train the teachers.
Yes,
Exactly.
exactly. And I think it's been a motivating factor. So our plan is to just keep that momentum going now. We've engaged a lot of different aspects of the high school itself. We're planning a parent night, we're planning student assemblies, and we're involving as many people as possible in creating those events, and I think that's starting to catch on that way as well.
Superintendent, I think you were, Dr.
No,
Lucas, you were
I'm
saying that you had a plan, right?
Oh,
Like,
for PD?
Yeah, to make it, well, you said, I asked you, how can we make it better? I know that that's not your jurisdiction per se, you can't force people to come to training, but if we were gonna change things a little bit around to make it more attractive and make sure that people actually start training so we get there. How are we gonna do that?
So I'm going to ask the coaches to chime in a second, but the Wednesday in the case of elementary and then the Thursday PD sessions, the teachers are attending. And we've had many teachers sign up for the Schoology clinics. They're meeting with the coaches individually, and I'm going to ask if a couple of the coaches don't mind sharing anecdotally. What the coaches have said to me is that the one-on-ones have been the most effective in getting teachers to jump on, aha moments happen. Could you guys speak to that a little bit?
But can we get through everyone?
They can. Oh, well, maybe Nancy, she's by herself, so that's different.
I can do it, it's only 80 teams.
Right.
Really? Okay.
Could you guys speak to some of your experiences with PD?
Well, I would love to. This is a one-on-one with a TK teacher at Horace Mann. I met last week with the TK Kinder team, and it was mostly a discussion about what Schoology might look like at the lower elementary grades. And we kind of talked about how it could be used as a parent resource, gets parents familiar with the platform, so as those children move through, they're comfortable by the time they get to middle school and high school when students are really using it online, completing online work. So I met with Annette, yesterday, one-on-one, and she said, you know, what's the bare minimum I have to do on Schoology in order to comply? And so I said, well, why don't we put your welcome letter? You have a welcome letter, right? So I showed her how to create a page with her welcome letter on it. And she said, oh, okay, well, what else? And I said, well, why don't you put a little banner with a link to your Seesaw? Because that's something that parents use at home with their kids. And she said, oh, okay. And we did it. It was pretty quick. And I only had a half an hour with her. And then I said, well, why don't we create a page and embed a YouTube video of songs that your kids do in class? And we did it. And she said, that was super easy. Let me do another one. And so she kind of, like in that 30 minutes, kind of turned around from being very cynical to saying this could be a great parent resource. And so she said, so we downloaded the parent access codes and she's going to send them home by Friday. She said, I'm going to give myself a few days to put some more things in. She's going to put her homework calendar up and put things on her, like events on her calendar. So, you know, I was really, like, I wish that she could go out and talk to all the other kindergarten teachers, just because she's not, like, she doesn't consider herself a techie person. And I think that other people seeing her doing this and seeing the vision of it is more than I could, than I could say. I could talk all day, but her having that experience and having that vision that she kind of created for herself would do more to bring those younger grades along. So that's my anecdote.
I can share. So I've met with several teachers one-on-one, some at the high school, yes. Some of them more than once, and I'm really happy about that because they get reinforced that way and they feel more comfortable. And I was talking to a language teacher, and this person told me that they were not very techie and that computers were not their friend. And I said, that's okay, and we were working on it, and I was talking to them, and they were asking me, well, why do I need this? And I was saying, well, you can do a lot of things. They were saying, what can I do with this? And I said, well, for example, wouldn't it be great if you put a question and your students had to respond orally? And you could record and you could listen to their sound, and they could record it over and over until they were happy with their pronunciation and their phrasing. And the teacher said, oh, that would be great. And I said, well, you can do that in Schoology, and it's not difficult. And so I've already met with them a few times. We've put some assignments up. They haven't actually used it with kids yet, but it's coming, probably in the next couple of weeks. I don't know if they're going to use the recording, the voice right away, but definitely it'll happen before the end of this year. And what was really impressive to me was how this person who told me, I'm not techie, I can't use computers, has consistently, every time I've come in and we've done a little baby step, has told me, that wasn't that bad. Is that all it is? Yes. So it's been really good, and that, like what Lisa said, every time I meet with somebody one-on-one or even in small groups, not so much in big groups because there's not so much interaction, but when I show people things, they're consistently surprised by how simple it is, because I think a lot of what people are hearing things, and so they're predisposed to think it's challenging, when oftentimes it isn't.
We could give several of the stories, like Reggie, do you feel excited?
Dr. Lucas,
Yes.
I have to move on.
Yes.
I apologize. I have a hard out tonight. We still haven't gotten to Mr. Seaman's presentation. Colleagues, if there's any other things on this, we'll have to continue it to another meeting. I have to move on, so I apologize. But hopefully we got the brunt of what we needed answered tonight, and we look forward to seeing how the development rolls out. Thank you, everybody, for working with those teachers.
I would like to ask for one thing. As these targets are knocked down that you've identified, and the training is ongoing as we get closer to December, I'd really like to have updates of how many teachers are now on board, at what level.
Okay. That's very important. And the answers to your questions are in this document if you have follow-up. Sorry.
All right, thank you very much, everybody, for all of your input tonight.